What's up, my friends? I'm your host, Cody Brockway, and we are back here with another really cool segment of Brockway's Vinyl Bites. Yes, we're rocking the YouTube waves, and look who I got here with me. That's right. We got Billy Sheehan of the Winery Dogs, Mr. Big, Niacin, the David Lee Roth Band, and Sons of Apollo, all these great groups, and I'm so glad, Billy, that you could be here with me today. Much appreciated, my friend. How are you doing today?
It's my pleasure to be here. I'm doing good, and thanks for having me along.
Of course, of course. Now, Mr. Big have a brand new record out. It's called 10, and it's really, really good. Pick up the vinyl, CD. I think you guys put it out on cassette, too, so pretty
Yeah,
cool. Pretty cool.
there's a record label, I believe they're out of Taiwan, that has been taking the lead on promotion and our back catalog, doing it in vinyl and stuff. And they've done a really, really wonderful job. So we're very pleased with what they've done for us. Very, very cool.
Yeah, you guys just recently re-released, well, this one came out for Record Store Day about a year ago, the first album.
Yeah.
And then
I still have that hat and shoes.
Oh,
We lost the cane, but I still have the hat and shoes.
that's awesome. And you guys just redid this one, too. You guys just re-released this one.
Yeah.
But this one is, I got this before you guys re-released it. I had to send away to Germany for this. So this is an original 1992 German pressing of this
great.
record. Yeah. Yeah, I like your band a lot, man.
Yeah, the vinyl thing is quite an interesting movement. I don't know that a lot of people actually play the vinyl. That's so I've read, but that's what I grew up on, and that's what I remember from my first experiences listening to music at all. Were all on from vinyl records, so it's nice to see it make a comeback like that. Very nice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love vinyl. Now that's pretty much kind of a collector's piece. I do play it from time to time, but usually I still have the cassette and obviously the CD, so I tend to play this a lot. But yeah, so let's get right into it. So Mr. Big just wrapped up the Big Finish, big world tour. You guys came to Canada, and so I want to ask you a couple of questions because you have a little bit of history with Canada.
I do, for sure. From Buffalo, New York, we're right over the bridge, and I spent my summers in Crystal Beach, and that's right over the bridge from Buffalo. And also, we played many cities were close enough to us to do shows back in the bar band days. Certainly in Toronto. As a matter of fact, there's a wonderful guitar company in Toronto called Lucin, Loucin. And the gentleman there made some instruments out of the wood they got from the El Macambo.
Oh,
and I was lucky enough to be able to get one. And I think he made one for Getty and a few other people. But it's a beautiful instrument. I got a post about it soon. But my memories of the El Macambo, the Gasworks, Larry's Hideaway, Piccadilly Tube, all those places we played back in the day when Yonge Street was really an incredible scene. Great bands all over the place. And of course, I had a short connection with Max Webster and Kim Mitchell as well. Canada's been very important. And being from Buffalo, we would get the Canadian stations. We'd get Shalom FM, so we could hear all the Canadian bands that weren't necessarily played on American radio. So it expanded our consciousness significantly. And we also got the hilarious House of Frightenstein on late night TV. People would come home from the bars at 3 a.m. and that would be on our local channel, and that was pretty hilarious.
My gosh, I haven't seen the hilarious House of Frightenstein in years. It's been at least since I'm only 26, but it's been at least since I was a kid. My dad used to have it on all the time. And you have extensive history with Toronto in particular. And from being from Buffalo, New York, you're right near the sort of Niagara region, right?
Exactly right.
So you used to play the Gasworks, like you mentioned, and do you remember you used to stick your bass up into the ceiling when you were done at the end of it?
Yeah, I did that several times. We had one incident we did. There was a club in Buffalo out by the lake, the lake shore of Lake Erie. There was like a little scene there, beachfront clubs south of Buffalo a little bit. And I forgot the name of the club, but we used to knock the ceiling tiles out with our at the end of the show, and the club owners would get mad. There wasn't any really damage to it or anything, but it was just a thing for them to get angry about it. So one day we played this club, and the club owner came to us and said, "Hey, look, you guys, we're tearing the whole ceiling out after the show. So if you want, just rip it, right? Just go for it. You can tear it. You can do whatever you want to it." And our manager was going to be there with us that night. So he came to us and said, "You guys, don't touch the ceiling." I guess the club owner was kind of playing a prank on him. "Don't touch the ceiling. They're really upset. They said they're going to sue us and call the cops if we touch the ceiling. And no matter what you do, leave the ceiling alone." So sure enough, the last song we put, Jim, now the tuning keys of my bass hooked onto some kind of structural device or wire. And when I pulled it, the whole ceiling of the whole club crashed down on everybody in the club. Now, fortunately, it was very lightweight. There's those little soft hands, but the whole thing came down. And the look on our manager's face was, he was absolutely mortified. He thought all of us were going to jail for the rest of our lives, but it turned out to be a harmless prank.
Oh man, that's some real Joe Walsh type stuff right there. That's rock and roll, man. Oh, that's so cool. So you mentioned about
go ahead.
You mentioned about having some sort of affiliation with Max Webster and Kim Mitchell. You were actually in Max Webster for a short amount of time. Is that correct?
A record short amount of time. Yeah, I did pre-production with them for, I think, the Mutiny Up My Sleeve record. Which was really a great record. And I was learning the songs, and then I was learning the other songs for the live show. Mike Tilka was still the bass player. Matter of fact, I went out to a couple live shows while he was still playing with the band, kind of a little awkward, of course, because they were gonna replace him with me. And then towards the end, I don't know, it just didn't seem to work out. And I went back to Buffalo, but I stayed in good communication with Kim. I loved his playing, and I love the band. I love Max Webster very much. And, really great band. Akimbo Alogo is one of the greatest rock records ever made, I think. What a masterpiece. Really fantastic. So, and in recent years, too, we've spoken a couple of times. I haven't gotten a chance to see him perform, but his version of "I Got a Line on You" is just one of the greatest remakes ever. So I try to stay tuned in to some degree to what he's doing, because he's a really incredible artist.
Oh yeah, he definitely is. He definitely is. I've had the pleasure of meeting him before. He's a really nice guy and a super skilled guitar player. He's just a fantastic musician. And like you were saying about Akimbo Alogo, some of his solo records are really awesome too.
Oh yeah.
But let's talk a little bit about the new record, about the brand new Mr. Big release. Of course, you guys have a live album that just recently released too, the Big Finish Tour Live. If you're in Canada, we still can't get it for another month. For whatever reason.
Don't feel bad. I don't have it yet either.
Well, I was lucky enough to see the tour, and I saw you at the Meridian Center in Toronto, and at the end of May, and it was so cool, and I was so stoked that you guys had just announced that you're putting out a new record, and I was going to see you within like a week. It was so cool. I even ran up to the front of the stage actually, and there was a herd of people, and I got to shake your hand actually at the very end of the show.
I remember that. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Well, we
always make a stink about the barricade. So many venues have the barricade, and it's so far from the stage, you can't shake anyone's hand. I'll like to put my bass out, and somebody will like to strum the strings for me for a couple notes in a song. So I think Toronto was the one place we didn't have a big gap at the barricade. We could be close to people. First of all, it always makes a better show when people are close, because you can see them, they can see you, they can hear what's going on stage, even when you're talking between songs and everything. And it's just a better experience for me. But some places, I remember I did an opener with some other musicians with the opening for the Rolling Stones in Japan. And we played the Tokyo Dome. And the barricade was so far back, I couldn't recognize, and I had pretty good eyes. There was not one face that was recognizable. They're so far away. Unbelievable. And they had camera crews and stuff all in there. And we felt like we were up there playing by ourselves, like there's nobody near us, and you'd hear the roar of the crowd off in the distance, but it was just something. I've always been for close contact.
Well, I thought that was really cool, and because there must have been at least 100, 200 people down the front of there, and Eric was signing stuff, and you were shaking hands and stuff, and I just thought that was really cool because a lot of people just give a wave and bow and then off the stage, but you guys took the time to be cool with your fans, and that's awesome. So you guys,
it's always been that way. Yeah, it's everything I own under the sun, moon, and stars. Everything I have, everything I own, comes from a fan buying a ticket, a T-shirt, or some recorded medium, and I never forget that. So it shows. Sometimes I hesitate if there's going to be a crowd and people get pushy and somebody might get hurt. Signing autographs from stage is totally forbidden. When I see other artists do it, I think it's a very bad thing, because then people start to push, and then why does he get an autograph and I didn't get it?
Yeah,
it causes a lot of animosity with people. So that's one of my rules. I don't. But afterwards, I'm always out by the bus. I'm always out in front of the venue or somewhere, and I sign everything somebody has, like a huge pile of CD covers. And sometimes I can't believe I've been on that many records. I go, "Are you sure I'm on this record?" I go, "Oh yeah, it says right there." Oh, okay. I will sign them all. I do it all the time. The only thing we avoid signing sometimes is somebody brings a stack of 8x10s. We know they're selling them on eBay, and I'm never charged for an autograph. And there's some telltale. They always use a blue Sharpie for some reason. So a guy comes up with a wad of 8x10s to sign with a blue Sharpie. I go, "Bro, I'll do one, but I'm not going to do the whole thing because I know you're selling them." "No, I'm not. I swear." We know how it works, So that's the only time I'll ever restrict that. But other than that, we've always been, myself personally, I've always been hands-on with fans. Because when I started out in the days back when we talked about Larry's Hideaway and the Gasworks, a lot of times those places didn't have a dressing room. And you get done with that, and you'd step off the stage and have a seat at a table or go hang at the bar. And there was never any separation of band and audience back then. Sometimes the stages were only this high, and you just step off it and, "Hey, how you doing? Thanks for coming out to the show." And any requests, things like that. So it's always been kind of the order of the day that we would do our best to take care of our fans. Sorry, I'm talking too much. I apologize.
No, you have the floor, my friend. And as a fan of the band, I'm someone who grew up with a boombox and the Lean Into It tape inside that boombox for years. And so as a fan who gets to see you, I really appreciate that really cool attitude and the gratitude with the fans. It's really great. And again, we got 10 out now. We got the 10th Mr. Big album, and you got Nick DiVirgilio in the band now. From Big Big Train and Spock's Beard and Neil Morris this, and now Mr. Big. So, due to the very unfortunate passing of Pat Torpey, R.I.P. I'm very sorry for your loss there, Billy. He was a fantastic musician. But now you have Nick D playing with Mr. Big. What was it like to sort of have him adapt to the fold, and what was it like working with him in the studio in creation of the new record?
Well, fortunately, Nick is just a grandmaster, and he's just so great. And Pat was a great rock drummer, but he also had that element of finesse and just fine points that if you don't include them, it doesn't really sound like the correct drums. Even though you're hitting the bass drum and the snare drum in the right spot, there's a million little tiny finesse things. And there's other great players that do that. Dennis Chambers, a famous jazz fusion funk drummer. He's got a million little things that he does that it's not just hitting three things. There's all this stuff going on. Jeff Porcaro from Toto, he was famous for that as well. Steve Gadd, guys like that. They got all that little thing, and Pat was way into that. So fortunately, Nick, being of that strata of capability, easily, was very, very good at doing what he needed to do, make everything sound the way it was supposed to sound. But he also brought in his own personality and his own life to the track. And we had a wonderful friend, Matt Starr, do drums with us, even while Pat was still with us, because Pat couldn't play a full kit. So Pat would stand at a microphone and sing. and Matt can sing, but he has got a lower range. We need Pat's range for the 3-part harmony. So
Yeah.
so when we found out about Nick, we opted for him because he was he's almost got the same range as Pat, exactly, and he's a lead singer as Pat was as well. So it really helped to have those 3 harmonies: myself, Paul Gilbert, and Pat Torpey, and now myself, Paul, and Nick, just to blast out those 3 harmonies as a bed for whatever vocal thing's going on. But he was just a really joy to work with, and a wonderful, sweet guy, supremely cooperative, and also great ideas and great input from him. We were very lucky to have the opportunity to work with him. Really great guy.
He's kind of like a modern day Phil Collins, where he can kind of he's the singing drummer. He can play pretty much anything you throw at him, and yeah, he's a great fit for the band. I've seen him actually. He played with Steve Hackett's band. I'm a big Genesis fan as well.
Huge. Yeah,
right on, right on. Have you seen him before?
I saw the Lamb Lies Down on Broadway show with Peter Gabriel. I saw Peter Gabriel's first tour solo with Robert Fripp on the side of the stage behind a curtain. And I have in my iTunes collection quite a lot of rare and impossible recordings. So I have the Lamb Lies Down on Broadway rehearsals and demos. A lot of the early stuff, Selling England by the Pound, and all, mostly Peter Gabriel version. But when Phil took over, it was one of the great examples of losing such an important element of a band, like as Peter Gabriel was to Genesis, and still continuing on and doing as good or even better, which was quite amazing. AC/DC, Back in Black, is another example with Brian Johnson. You know, when he came in, you know, after Bond is irreplaceable. And still is, but Brian came in, and man, one of the greatest rock records of all time, Back in Black. So there's a few examples of that happening where a giant change in a formula of a band. Mostly it doesn't go well. Mostly it goes away, but statistically. But there are some stellar examples of people coming in or changing something and have it do as good or better. And Nick certainly is the type of guy I would compare to Phil Collins. Absolutely.
Right on. Yeah. Well, and he's a big Genesis fan too, to my knowledge. I mean, so speaking of when band members change, sometimes there'll be a band of 4 or 5 dudes. They'll sell a couple million records, and then eventually someone leaves. Sometimes the singer will leave and go have a solo career. Sometimes that singer will call you and create this.
That's right. See,
David Lee Roth. This is a great album. What was this like?
Thank you. Yeah, that was an incredible adventure, and I think if the second record would have been more like the same spirit as Eat 'Em a Smile, I think that band would still be together today and we'd still be touring. But unfortunately, but you take a chance, and I give him credit for taking a chance. Let's make a left turn. I remember when Bowie made a left turn, and the Spiders from Mars were gone, and Ziggy Stardust was gone, and then 1984 came out. Or Diamond Dogs came out, and oh man, all of us Bowie fans were like, "What is happening?" But there's some good stuff on there. We kind of liked it, and then he managed to continue on and do as good or better than ever. Here again, I think I give Dave great credit for taking a chance. Unfortunately, you know, when you take a chance, you roll the dice, it can come up 7 or some other number, and unfortunately, it didn't quite come up like I thought it would have. But it wasn't the success that Eat 'Em a Smile was, and prior to that tour, I left the band as well. So, I'm forever grateful to Dave for bringing me along for Eat 'Em a Smile. We had a riot, and I learned. It was like a PhD in showbiz.
Oh, I bet it was. And for me, it's just so cool to hear you play with Steve Vai on this record. I'm going to see him next month. Actually, he's playing with Beat, the King Crimson project, Adrian Belew and Danny Carey and such. And so that's going to be really cool. But yeah, I'm going to have to, because I'll be meeting him before the show. I'm going to have to get him to sign my LP. And whenever I get to meet you in person, I'm going to have to get you to sign that too.
It's a deal. Bring everything. I'll sign it all.
Just no 8x10s.
Half an hour.
Okay, so seeing as though you've just finished up the Big Finish tour with Mr. Big, and with this new album out, I know the tour and the live album is called The Big Finish. Is this kind of the end of the road for Mr. Big, or do you still see yourselves going back and making another record, especially now that you got Nick D playing with you guys?
No, I don't think so. We wanted to put a period at the end of the sentence, and we also wanted to. We see now. I think REO Speedwagon just announced that they're going to stop playing. Aerosmith had to stop playing, and with Mr. Big, we're still in pretty good shape, and we can sing and play the things. We got to change keys a lot. Still sing and play things that we've done in the past, but I didn't want to get to a point where we're crawling over the finish line. I would like to run over the finish line and on the final lap and do that. So that's kind of the idea of it. We're very glad to have ended on a high point, and I believe that's what we did.
But, you did in Toronto.
Yeah, well, I was so glad that Toronto, because I always got a lot of comments. Why don't you play in Canada? Why don't you play in Canada? And people don't understand that we have a product to sell. We can't choose who buys it. If Canada doesn't buy a show or hire us, we can't just set up somewhere and play. There's customs and immigration and taxes and work permits and all kinds of things you got to go through. You can't just pop in and play. So I'm so glad when Toronto booked us. It was so, because I love Toronto so much. And I wish I would have played there so much more with so many other bands, but sometimes it's difficult to get to work that out. But yeah, that was a very, very cool situation to go back to Toronto again.
Yeah, and it was cool to have you. I went on my Facebook one day, and I'm following you, and I saw your post about Toronto finally booked us, and it was like 2 days later. I was like, the tickets went on sale. I was, yeah, I'll be there.
Great.
There, it was great. It was really, really, really good. And so going into your past as a bassist, going way back to the early beginning of you even picking up the instrument, how long have you been playing? I know you've been playing since the early 70s, and was there a defining moment that pulled you into playing bass guitar? Because I know as a musician, there's something that just like this magnetic force that just pulls you to it. What was that?
I was lucky to be at the age I was when music exploded, when the Beatles were on Ed Sullivan, when rock and roll was king, and suddenly, and there was, the Elvis rockabilly, greased hair, and then suddenly the Beatles came out, and the whole world, everybody washed all that out of their hair. I got Beatle boots and wore that was I was very young, but I saw that change. And around the corner from my house, there was a local band, one of the best local bands in Buffalo. They were called the Rockin' Paramounts, and then there were the Mellow Brick Road. Then they were the Road through the years. But their bass player was Joe Hesse, and he is a dear friend of mine still to this day. But he played bass, and he was a cool guy. He had a Triumph motorcycle and a hot girlfriend, and I wanted to be like Joe. So he let me pick up his bass one time, and I plucked it a few, and I got a blister on my finger, and so it was a match made in heaven. So he was kind of the catalyst, but then seeing the Beatles on Ed Sullivan really pushed me over the edge, because I saw 4 guys on stage and hundreds of girls screaming and said, I want that job. That's what I want to do. And so as trite and small-minded as that might seem initially, it opened the door to music as an art form to me. And at a very early age, I got into a lot of classical music and a lot of jazz and a lot of more advanced, if you will, music. I was an early adopter of prog when it first came out. The first King Crimson record may have been one of the first prog records to really be called that genre, give that genre a name. And I also really wanted to do. I didn't see any limitations, though a lot of people have some limitations because it's a bass. I would learn little Bach pieces and a little Sonny Rollins tenor sax solo part, things like that, but generally played rock and mostly bands we'd copy bands that had a lot of singing, Three Dog Night, Crosby, Stills and Nash, Grand Funk Railroad, all that stuff. And so it was an important thing for me to get involved in a broad spectrum of music rather than just bass per se. So I think that helped me as a player, because I just try to understand drums from the beginning. And the first thing I learned from my friend Joe, I mentioned, I went over to his house and it was just him and the drummer practicing. And I go, Joe, where's the rest of the band? And he said, well, you see, every time the drummer, hits a bass drum, I got to play a note on that at the same time. You listen to bass and drums and they're locked together. So before I even owned a bass, I learned the most important fundamental of bass playing is you got to lock in with the drummer. You do what he does. And that's generally what anytime I even go see a band, I watch the drummer first. And if it's happening, then I see who else might be on stage. So it's an important thing for me. So those are a couple of the aspects, a couple of the things that I looked at when I was very young. And I wasn't really consciously figuring it out. It's just kind of all happened. I wanted to play. And sure enough, right away, I started performing live in 1970. I had played since, so I've been played over half a century, over 50 years. I know I'm well over 5,000 total gigs.
Yeah.
Maybe closer to 6,000 now. Because back in the day, like Gasworks, you'd set up on Monday and play till Saturday night, or something like that. You played 6 of the 7 nights. One night would be off, and you go to the next club and do 6 of the 7 nights there. Then go back to Buffalo, do the same thing. Almost every city had the same format. So we played constantly. One time we did 21 shows in a row.
Wow.
One time we did 3 full shows in one day. Played down at one M&T Plaza, downtown Buffalo, New York, for the noon lunch crowd. Packed up, went to Niagara Falls to play after a Buffalo Bills exhibition game for the crowd. Finished the show, packed up, and went to the Club Lakewood in Niagara Falls, New York, and set up and played a whole show till 2 a.m. Got home and kept on going. So that was a huge help too, because as you're performing live gigs every night, it's just I wish so many players now had that same opportunity, because it really gets you to figure out what the priority really is on the instrument. So that was a big help to me too, that I was born at a particular time when live music was everything and everywhere. You could, within an hour drive of Buffalo, there were 150 places to play, easy, not including high schools, which I had a dance almost every Friday or Saturday. Some high school had a dance. We always would leave Fridays and Saturdays open and go get the high school dance crowd, which later would, once they could get ID, they'd be out of the clubs watching it a few years later. So we're propagating a new audience. That's fun.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, and now it's so different now. I mean, you'd think that with the progression and stuff that you guys were making in the 70s and 80s and 90s, it's harder to get out there and find places to play now. I mean, there's certain places that are dedicated to that sort of thing, but for the most part, a lot of the bars don't have the same attitude about it all the way that they used to. It's real different, and I don't know.
Music isn't as an important component in people's lives as it was when I was young, and I'm much older than you are. When I was young, it was everything. What band you were into is how you separated groups out in high school. Oh, these are the guys that are into this band. These guys are into the Stones. No, they're the Beatles. No, they're the Who. There's all we would. That's how we would befriend people, because we all liked the same band. We always used to write our names on the album cover, because we used to lend them and share them so much. That way you'd always get your record back in the end. And all my vintage old album covers have, they got Billy Sheehan written on the front of it, because that's the only way they ever would return to me, because they knew they come back a little bit more scratched, but we didn't mind the scratches in vinyl back then. But it is different now. Now, early on, we did make our own gigs a lot of time. We go to the Playboy Club in Buffalo. There was one briefly, believe it or not. Never had a rock band. And so we said, wait, you got to do it. Talk to them. Finally, so they did it. We have a Talas at the Playboy Club show, and that was we made it happen. And they started hiring more rock bands. Shirkston Beach, which is in Canada, right over the bridge from Buffalo. We talk with them about, if you guys set up a stage, we could come and play, and then you get a little armband for an extra $1 and come down to the beach where we are, and you can hear the band. It turned into a national venue for a while. They had a serious stage made with proper power, and we actually created a gig just by out of necessity, because we wanted more places to play, and certainly in Canada. So I think you have to get a little creative. A coffee shop that's got a big enough spot where you can set up an acoustic guitar and do a couple songs. That's a possibility. That's a stepping stone. Some bar that's got enough room that you could set up a little drum kit or whatever, going, hey, how about Tuesday nights when a dead night, we invite people down. You'll do better at the bar. We'll take the money at the door and we'll call it even. And that's how a lot of gigs that we did back in the day were. So it may still be a possibility to expand that. And I certainly hope it does, because there's so many great young players now. Adding that experience to their expertise would really put them over the top, I think, in many ways.
Yeah, and I think that even though the bar situation is a lot different, we do have avenues like Facebook and Instagram and YouTube where a lot of people can sort of push themselves. But at the same time, even while you market yourself that way, you don't have that. It doesn't really give you that same feeling as playing live with somebody else right next to you, right? And playing live to an audience. You're playing along to a song or something, and you put it up, and then a lot of people do get discovered and stuff that way, but it still sort of takes away from that sort of meeting other people and connecting, and I don't know. Yeah, but that's
it is very well. In Europe, there's still a lot of huge festivals.
Oh yeah,
we did a whole bunch of them just in this last round with Mr. Big, and there are just thousands of people as far as the eye can see, and it's a riot, and it's so much fun, and everybody's hanging out, and it's just an experience. And they're even growing now. I mean, they're continuing on. The Download Festival, Hellfest, all these legendary festivals they have in Europe. I don't see that happening in America. I'm not sure why. There's a couple of things like that, but it's not the culture like they have. And in Europe, people take the summer off and they go from festival to festival to festival all over the continent there. So I'd like to see that happen elsewhere. South America, too, is just an amazing live scene. We go down there to play, and it's great. Most of Southeast Asia, we have great gigs. Japan. That's one thing I wanted to mention as far as the end of Mr. Big. As far as we were concerned, the last show we did in Romania, that was it. But we had some talk in the background that we started out this farewell tour in Southeast Asia first, Beijing, but it was primarily warm-up shows for Japan. And we did shows in Japan, and then when we said farewell there, that was it for Japan. And they've been such an important part of our lives as fans and as a market for us to play. And it just enriched us culturally beyond belief. So it's all done. And they were saying, couldn't we just get the final show, please? And I was, the band generally, we were kind of like, no, we said it was the farewell. We want to go back on our word. But so we said, the only way we'll do it is we can do some kind of a charity thing. So we worked it out so we can auction off a lot of our stuff, a lot of Mr. Big artifacts, and raise money for, there was another earthquake on the west coast of Japan a while back that didn't get as much publicity as the one in, I think it's 2013. And they still got a lot of problems. So we're going to do 2 shows in Japan, Tokyo and Osaka, in February of next year. And that's the absolute final finito thing. And hopefully we'll raise some more money. We did shows after the Fukushima quake in 2013. We raised $250,000 for the Red Cross for Japan, and helped a lot of people. So hopefully we can do something like that now and end on a high note in Japan. So that there will be 2 more shows. That was a secret for a while. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to talk about it yet, but I just did. So sorry.
Well, hey, for our Japanese friends who happen to be living in Japan at the moment, you know what's going on in February, so you might as well set aside some time now. That'll be killer. You're a good guy, man. That's really cool. And you guys go and do that.
Yeah, we as I said, we've been so many places we've been to. It's just so incredible. Indonesia, I get more email and fan mail from Indonesia than anywhere. It's amazing. We played all these cities that almost no Western band has ever played. And just an incredible experience. Singapore, Korea, what an incredible experience. Taiwan, Thailand, we're very lucky. And all across South America, every country in South America, we've been very lucky to play all around the world. We haven't played on the continent of Africa or Antarctica, though, so we miss those 2.
I was just going to ask you, is there anywhere, because you've been playing for a long time with lots of different projects, which we'll touch on in a minute, but is there anywhere in specific that you haven't played yet that you would find very interesting to go to? aside from what you just mentioned?
Definitely those two. We've played in Russia. We've played in China. I've been, inside, into Beijing and other in interior cities as well. Played all across Australia.
Wow.
All over South America. We're pretty well covered to most everything. And in Japan, a lot of bands initially would go, you play Tokyo and then maybe Osaka. And if you're really big, Tokyo, Osaka, Nagoya. But we've played from Sapporo in the north down to Kagoshima, where our plane got diverted because the volcano was erupting when we landed there, and we played all over the island of Japan, the main island, and the north and south of it as well, and also on the west coast. Niigata is a city on the west coast we played, and Japan is an incredible place because it's the safest, most civilized place I think on earth. Singapore is pretty darn good too, but in Japan you can get along easily without English. People are friendly and they know a little bit of it, and there's a translator app now. And I remember being in the train station recently, thousands of people in this massive, huge train station. You could have 10 football games in there. There was not a shred of litter anywhere. Nothing. I was looking for litter. Come on, there's got to be somewhere. Nothing. Not
clean.
Not a microscopic bit of graffiti anywhere. No, nothing. It was just so clean, and they care about their country, and it's just an incredible experience for us, and many other places too. Which has been, like I said, Singapore is incredible. Taipei, Taiwan, Bangkok, Thailand, an amazing Buddhist country, the land of smiles, really sweet, wonderful people. Russia was a great experience. Played several cities there. Wonderful people, great fans. So we're very lucky. I'm supremely grateful for the experiences we've had, and not only just Mr. Big, with a bunch of other bands I've toured with as well, but to have been all around this great big world. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and to touch on some of those other bands, I mean, we've already touched on the David Lee Roth and things like that, but you've also been in a couple bands with Mike Portnoy, who's one of my favorite drummers. You've been in Sons of Apollo. You've been in the Winery Dogs. You've been in Talas, obviously. You've been in Niacin. And so what I want to know is what is it like to go in for the writing process for each of these different projects? Like, say you're going in to do a new Winery Dogs record and then a new Mr. Big record. What are the differences, and what is the creative process like for you?
Well, we usually get together and jam out parts for the Winery Dogs. You just come up with ideas and together in a room. That's how we've done all of our records. The first Winery Dogs, of my big three records, I actually have to expand it to 4 or 5. The first Winery Dogs record, Eat 'Em to Smile, Lean Into It album. But I have to expand into that now. I'll veer off subject for a second. The 1985 Talas record, done recently, was mixed, and vocals were recorded in Toronto, and it was mixed in Toronto by Russ McCabe, a great engineer there in Toronto. He did an amazing. So we had a little bit of stamp of Canadian.
Love
content.
that.
That was cool.
That's great. That's great.
But what we were talking about before I so rudely changed the subject.
I was just wondering.
Yeah. In some other bands, people bring in a song that might be done, or it might be just a couple of chords, and we flesh it out. There's no one way of doing it. I have notebooks filled with song titles, just page after page of song titles. There's no song, there's no chords, there's no lyrics, just what would sound like a title. And for years, I thought, is that weird? I don't know if it's a good idea to I don't know if this is helping or not. And I had the great fortune of sitting down with a couple of totally amazing hit songwriters that have written more platinum records than I could imagine. They do the same thing. It's not an uncommon thing. We write down little snippets of a lyric, song title, a phrase. Somebody says something that catches your ear. That could be a chorus, things like that. So there's no real one way to go about it. And band to band, sometimes somebody brings in a song done, ready to go. Sometimes we flesh it out as we're standing there. And once in a while, Most of the bands I've been in have been heavy writing band. We haven't used a lot of outside material, but once in a while we have. Lucky this time off of the Lean Into It album. That was from a Jeff. Forgot his last name. It's on the record, the sleeve there. So
I can find that for you in just a second. Hold on.
I'm sure you can. He was a great writer. He brought the song in. He thought, man, we gotta do this song.
That is a great song. It's Jeff Paris.
Jeff Paris, yes, of course, great songwriter. And yeah, once in a while we'll pull in just a great song. We did a couple remakes. We did 30 Days in the Hole on the very first Mr. Big record. We did Wild World on the Bump Ahead record, the Cat Stevens song.
Yeah,
and,
I know it well.
We also did the song Mr. Big, because people would always ask, so where'd you get the name Mr. Big? We go, well, it's a song by Free. And, and oddly, though it's not actually related, back in the days with Talas, we used to play that song. And at the Poorhouse West in Hamburg, New York, in the early 70s, there's a bass solo in the middle of it with Andy Fraser from Free. Yeah. And I told the guys in the band, look, when that bass solo comes, just stop and I'll just do my thing alone, so unaccompanied solo. And then I'll concert back in. So I go, diddled around and do my crazy ass stuff. And okay, 2, 3, 4, I'll come back in and play the song out and end it. And that kind of stuck. And so that was the beginning of me ever playing a unaccompanied bass solo. Love it or hate it. That's how it started it. So we wanted to do the song Mr. Big, because people would perpetually, every interview, how'd you get the name Mr. Big? Oh, it was a song by a band called Free. But oh yeah, well, how is the name Mr. Big? Isn't anyone reading anyone else's interviews? So we finally said, I know, we'll put Mr. Big on the record. We did it fully live in the studio, no overdubs, no nothing. And we really sang it and play it. Yeah. No, it's on the Bump Ahead record.
Oh, okay. I don't have that CD on hand right now. I have the tape actually in the other room.
that was our third record. So anyway, after doing that, still every interview. So how'd you get the name? We tried to show you, but it's just one of the other comedy aspects of having to deal with things of that nature.
I knew that. That's why I didn't ask. That's why I don't have it.
So how'd you get the
name? Yeah, from the Free song, right? Absolutely. Yeah. So when you go to write a song, do you have a specific protocol to sort of help your own creative juices flow? Not necessarily in collaboration with other people, but just on your own.
I set the iPhone up on selfie video when I'm down here in my studio now. I'll be sitting down here with my bass coming up, practicing exercises, learning more things. I'm always spent hours a day just to keep it at a particular level, but to jump up, it takes even more. So I really work hard on it. It's a joy to come down here and just play. I'm so glad I have the opportunity to do that. So I'll come up with a little idea and I'll hit selfie video. Sometimes I do a little explanation. Okay, here's the main riff, and then I'll go into the chorus, but we still need like some kind of a bridge section. So I play it into the thing. So I got hundreds of snippets of little songs. So, and then at various points in time, I'll go in, extract them all, look through them out. No, that didn't work. No, that didn't look good. That might be something. Maybe that too. And then I'll expand them from there. In the old days, I would use just a cassette recorder, and I had all
the classic.
I had hundreds of cassettes that have little snippets on them. So at one point, once I had my own digital studio, I took 2 dual cassette players, 2 cassette players in each unit.
Right.
It's designed so each one also has a loop. So when it ends the tape, it automatically reverses it and plays the other side. So I had 2 of those machines, 4 cassettes, 8 tracks, made Pro Tools or whatever recording template.
Yeah.
Put 4 cassettes in, hit record, hit play on each machine, and it would get both sides of the cassette and save it in a giant, huge digital file. So I saved everything I had. I had a pile of cassettes. I mean, like this big around and about 1.5 feet high. Ended up getting all of them on there, and so I have a massive library of most of it. I'd say 90% of it I'm not sure if I can actually use, but it may lead you to something else. and there may be a couple of gems left in there yet. But yeah, I just generally get some kind of recording device. As I'm playing along, I'll think, oh, wait, what's that thing there? That sounded that might sound like a song, and take it from there. And I find it's not too much different, songwriter to songwriter. Some people, though, they're very wise to come in every day and sit down and force themselves to work for about 2 or 3 hours a day. Sit down, they look at a blank sheet of paper. And that's, for many writers, that's the wall you must climb over. And I said, okay, what do I want to write about? And then you just get to, out of the thin air, create. And that's what art is all about, creating something from nothing. So
yeah, you just pull it out of your heart, and what comes out, right? There's so many records of them. Yeah, absolutely. That's killer. Do you still have some of those tapes? Do you still own them?
I got rid of most of the tapes because I had them securely recorded digitally, and I wrote down all the little notation on the cassettes themselves and put it in a note that went on the same file. I was a fanatic on it, but I didn't need to keep them anymore because I've got everything backed up on several drives, and so it's relatively safe in a digital format. So, but I kept some. There's some that I just won't let go. I mean, same as my old vinyl from back in the day. I don't necessarily collect vinyl now, but a couple of records I just couldn't part with because they were so important to me.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I'm a big collector of vinyl, as you can probably see.
Yeah,
that's right. All mostly David Bowie in there.
Great,
great stuff. Yeah, I think that we like all the same music, and
funny you should mention Bowie. I had I mentioned the Lamb Lies Down on Broadway demos. I've got the entire record, Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, alternate takes of every song with vocal.
Wow. So is he one of your top favorite artists?
Bowie?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I was a huge Bowie fan from The Man Who Sold the World, and then went back and got his earlier Duram records from that, and was a huge fan of Pinups and Ziggy Stardust, every song on there. I saw him with the Diamond Dogs tour. I didn't see him before that, sadly, but that was pretty great, though. That pretty great show. Yeah, huge Bowie.
To have seen him on Diamond Dogs and then go see, probably no less than a year later, see Genesis on The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. That's pretty amazing. Have you seen The Musical Box?
No, I didn't see that tour. I had friends that went, and I was jealous. I couldn't.
Oh, I meant the tribute band.
I had to play that night.
Yeah, there's a tribute band based out of Quebec, and
it's a band called The Musical Box.
Yeah. So they're called The Musical Box, and Peter actually gave them a bunch of his old costumes and masks and all of that stuff, and so they go out and they tour all early Genesis up till about 1977, 78, around there.
Mind blowing.
Yeah, pretty cool.
I thought you meant the. There isn't a record called Musical Box, but there is the song.
The song is on Nursery Crime. Yeah.
Yeah, great song. Yeah, I mixed it up there. I apologize. But
that's okay. That's okay.
Amazing.
A bit more.
Yeah. Peter Gabriel. I have a version of him doing "Here Comes the Flood" with just him and Robert Fripp on piano, and it will tear your heart out of your chest. It is mind blowing. So
is that the similar to the version that's on Robert's solo album Exposure?
Maybe I don't know. Not sure.
Well, he's redone it a couple of times. He did it. I know he did it with Robert Fripp way back, and then he redid it at some point in the '90s too, and that's on his Greatest Hits album. But back to you. Back to you.
No, that the one I have, I believe, is prior to the recording of the very first recording of it. I think it was a demo.
Wow. Yeah. I would love to hear that, man. That is so cool.
I'm traveling. I always travel with my hard drive, but setting it up and just to open the folder with the music takes about 10 minutes for all the folders to open because the RAM on the computer can barely handle it. So, but I got quite an extensive. And here in my studio, I have 2 computers. One is dedicated just for iTunes and recorded music and finding it online. A lot of websites now you can go to and find live Genesis and live King Crimson and live everybody that doesn't exist anywhere else. It's pretty amazing. So Anyway, we digress.
Well, I think that's very cool, and as Genesis being one of my all-time favorite bands, it is so cool to connect with you on that level as well, just being Genesis freaks.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
I
I would
understand.
always, as a warm up or in between songs, I would play. or
Watch
play
for this.
the, or play the. But I found out it's actually double notes. And it's way harder to do.
That's Mike Rutherford, right? That's back in New York City.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah, so great.
Brilliant. And I know another person that you have been obviously very connected with through bands like Winery Dogs and Sons of Apollo is also a huge Genesis fan. It's Mr. Mike Portnoy. And what I want to know is sort of about how you kind of got connected with him, because you guys have done numerous projects. I mean, you guys even did some stuff with Tony McAlpine. But this is a fantastic album, by the way. I understand that he wanted you to be part of Liquid Tension Experiment way back in the late '90s there, but that sort of didn't work out at the time. How did that all come to fruition, and then subsequently Winery Dogs and Sons of Apollo?
Well, I don't recall ever hearing anything about Liquid Tension things. So I'm not sure if that's true or not, but it might.
I had heard that he wanted to ask you, but I maybe he didn't. I'm not sure.
Well, I just know we used to play a place called L'Amour's in New York City in early '80s with Talas, and Talas changed members. We had our new drummer that came was a guy named Mark Miller, and he blew everybody's mind. And he's the guy in the new record I just mentioned that recorded in Toronto as well.
Amazing,
just mind blowing. And to this day, he's just one of. And Ray Lugier from Korn is a dear friend of mine. He lives in Nashville. And when we'd play Pittsburgh, he'd be down there. They'd be down there. Him and his friends. They were just young kids trying to get recordings of Talas, and and the video screen would be all shaky. And Mark Miller drum stuff like that. So there's a photo, I think, of the first Dream Theater rehearsal, and Mike's wearing a Talas shirt because he was a big fan. So it started with him coming to see me play back in the day, and that's because there's always the age difference is always a factor in some of these stories, because I was already out and playing and doing things, and we had probably already toured with Van Halen in 1980 by the time he saw me after that. So we had a good situation, good reputation. So he was part of the audience for that. And then through the years, just got in touch with me for various things. And we ended up doing the Winery Dogs. This is one of my favorite bands I've ever been involved with. And
I love it.
We just have it's really cool because it's kind of a jammy band. I love Mr. Big, but the songs got to be the songs. That's how they go. And that's how you play them. Where the Winery Dogs we got room to move, and each night it's a kind of it's a new experience. Nothing's the same night to night. There's not wildly different, but there's always some things that we do that are improvisational. And I've always been more of I kind of like that. Though there is a beauty to playing things exactly right. That's why I always great respect for classical musicians. They've got to play everything exactly the way it's supposed to be and do it all in sync with each other. That is an incredible art in itself, as much as improvising and having your improvisation land with the other musicians you're on stage with. So I've been lucky to be in several situations like that. And my relationship to drummers has always been really good. Like I mentioned earlier, and I've been lucky to play with Dennis Chambers, one of the greatest of all time, I think. I did a record with Terry Bozzio, Greg Bissonette from Meet 'em and Smile, amazing drummer. We did a version of Van Halen's "Light Up the Skies" with me and Vinnie Colaiuta on drums, Yngwie on guitar, and Doug Pinnick singing. That was a recording we did with that. Steve Smith, I did a Tony McAlpine record with him, another amazing drummer. So my relationship with drummers is pretty good usually. So it carries on. I think that's a contributing factor to all those connections there.
Well, you mentioned Vinnie Colaiuta. There's the Frank Zappa connection there, right?
Yeah.
Frank Zappa, Sting, and he's been in so many projects too.
Yeah, I was a huge Zappa fanatic from Freak Out, from the very first record when it first came out, and then Absolutely Free, We're Only in It for the Money, Uncle Meat, Hot Rats. Hot Rats was our record in high school.
Oh yeah, that's a killer album.
Yeah, Waka Chawaka, and also Live at the Fillmore. The first apartment I had, we had that record on always. The only we go over to it and flip it over and play the other side. Let that play for 6 times. Flip it over. So when I got together with Steve Vai years ago, we discovered that we both could recite most of an entire side of almost any Frank Zappa record. Just just verbally sing it, and all the comedy bits and everything. So it's great to have a common influence like that. Sometimes opposites are nice too, because you get from each other. But when you have it in common, there's a common language. And I know, not to divert back to that's the subject again, but when we were writing for Eat 'Em and Smile, Steve would go, "Yeah, it's kind of a Hendrixy thing." "Oh yeah," and I said, "No, it's kind of more of a Bowie meets ZZ Top," And we would speak in a language like that without knowing how to read or write music myself. They could explain to me what they're thinking, and I could understand it. So, yeah, I've been lucky to play with some really great musicians, and I think I'm a better player as a result.
Well, hey, I think that's totally cool, and I love this. I mean, to me, this is still new. It's only been out for about a year. I think this is a really good record. I was so happy when you guys put out the single for Xanadu, and that video. I was like, "Oh, this is awesome! This is awesome!"
Thank you.
Do you think that there's anything on the anything possible on the sort of future palette for the Winery Dogs? I mean, I know you're very busy doing other stuff.
I think everybody's busy now. We'll see what happens in the future. I would love to, of course, and I think all of us are of the same mind. But years ago, you got in a band and you were in that band until you retired. That was. But I remember when that started to change, and people would jump off and do other bands and other things. And in a way, there's a real beauty to that, because by playing with other musicians, you get other influences, and you have to deal with other people's nuances of what they do, and little fine points, and figure out how to work with them and harmonize and counterpoint or synchronize. And so then when you come back to your band, you have a bigger vocabulary. So I've always kind of been more of a fan of jumping around to some degree with other musicians, even if it's just to practice and jam. Because when you come back to your home base, you've got more to go on, and you kind of expand your spectrum of ideas, I believe. So that could very well happen in this situation. Go back and reconfigure and go out and do some more work. That'd be nice.
That's a very progressive way of thinking, actually, in terms of the more people you play with, the more diversities you sort of get used to as a musician, and the more you can adapt and learn, and then bring that back to other projects. And so, yeah, that's a really great thing for sure.
Yeah, I think some guys have this great one thing they do, and it's awesome. They don't need to do anything else. Just do it. Billy Gibbons. Just do Billy Gibbons. I don't ever want to hear him play any jazz. I want to hear him play Billy Gibbons. For some guys, it's kind of nice. All of a sudden, they take a left turn, and that's kind of interesting. But there's some guys that I'm glad they're chiseled in stone. It's amazing. Don't ever change it. I'm glad Bon Scott never got into Prague.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of Prague. Bon Scott was, Highway to Hell, and just some of the amazing stuff. And it's funny because a lot of people put up a little battle line between genres, and I've always been against that, because I can go from Sinatra to AC/DC to Genesis to Sonny Rollins to Mahavishnu, and it's all really great. And that's important. And I see the balkanization sometimes of well, I'm into this band and we hate everybody else. Oh yeah, well, we hate your band. We played a show with Testament, one of our last shows, a pretty heavy metal band.
Love them.
Oh, fantastic! They were great. Chuck Billy, great front man. Just really, I stood on the side stage. They got a new drummer, this young kid that was mind blowing. and just what a joy to watch a band do their thing and do it amazingly, no matter what it is. It's pretty cool.
Mr. Big and Testament. That would have been was it Mr. Big you were playing with at the time?
Yeah, it was cool.
That would have been so cool. That would have been so cool because Mr. Big have a lot of heavy tunes. I mean, you pop in the Lean Into It CD and immediately you get the electric drill song, right? Daddy, Brother, Lover, Little Boy. And you guys play that solo. You double Paul halfway through the solo and you guys pull out the drills.
Yep. Makita.
Whose idea was that? I got to know. Going off script.
Well,
I got to
Paul was in Mental Racer X before Mr. Big, and that's how I found out about him. And though I did know him back in Pittsburgh, he used to come see Talas play before he moved out to LA. I remember the stage was only this high, and I remember this kid like almost face to face with me as I was playing on stage in the audience, and that was Paul. And so he got into Racer X, and they did a lot of amazing histrionics of playing. And their singer, Jeff Martin, said, I think he made a joke. He said, Paul, the only way you can play faster, if you get a drill and put picks on the end of it. And so he did. He put picks on the end of a thing. Turns out he's actually still faster than the drill. But so we were doing the Lean Into It album, and that was the song. I'd actually written Daddy, Brother, Lover, Little Boy on a napkin at the Rainbow Bar and Grill, and there's an example of writing a title with no song, and we turned it into that. Into that song. So we for a little solo, Paul goes, well, I'll do it on I'll play the thing like on a drill thing. And he goes, well, you should do the bass. We'll do it in harmony. And so I have to step on like a synthesizer bass pedal to hold the note that we need, because as I'm doing the drill, it's just this noisy, scraggly, crackly thing, but you can hear the note. And so it required me to have to get bass pedals though I've used them from back in the 70s, but I wasn't using them presently. So we managed to do it and do it live as well. Now the punchline of the whole thing is I'll make this short and sweet. We had a manager, one of the founding fathers of the music business, Mr. Herbie Herbert, one of the greatest managers of all time. That was really the really underlying source of Mr. Big's success. He cut us deals and got us tours and got us. He was why we became successful, and God rest his soul. He passed away not too long ago, but he was the man. And so unknown to us, he contacted the Makita Power Tool Company in Japan and asked if they would be interested in having Mr. Big endorse Makita Power Tools. Now they're a power tool company. They didn't even know what endorsements were, so he arranged to have two of them flown to his office in San Francisco. And he had a translator and a lawyer, and I gave this presentation to these gentlemen from Makita Power Tool Company. Here's Mr. Big. They got a #1 single. Their record just went platinum, blah, blah, blah. They're using the Makita Power Tools. I gave them this big, long story, explained what endorsements were, how Michael Jackson's Pepsi endorsement worked, and all these things. Finally, he asked the translator, are they ready for the punchline? I think so. And so he said, would you like to have Mr. Big endorse Makita Power Tools? And they said, yes. How much? And Herbie, this is why he's so great. Herbie said to them, fact, documented truth, $1 million. And they said, okay. So
wow.
For a joke, comedy, a brilliant businessman that he is, Herbie Herbert turned in. Now we didn't just pocket $1 million. I mean, we took, there was to be divvied up in various ways, but we still did come out of it with a nice contribution to our retirement fund. I must say, thank you, Herbie, very much. And to this day, my garage is full of. But if I needed a pole saw to cut some limbs down that were hitting the house the other day. Went out and got the Makita version of it. So I'm loyal to this day to the Makita Power Tool Company.
Loyalty, oh, that's the best. That is one of the coolest stories I've ever heard. Imagine that, right? You use a power drill for one song and you end up endorsing that company. That's fantastic.
Fun.
That's fantastic.
Right.
I want to talk to you a little bit more about your bass. You play a lot of basses, right? But you particularly play a lot the Yamaha Attitude Limited 3 bass.
Yeah.
What do you like the most about that particular bass, and how do you get your sound?
Well, normally my original bass, the Fender that I had back in the day, is on the wall here, but I was doing some work on it, so it's not in the room at the moment. But the Yamaha Attitude bass is kind of built around what that Fender was, with some modifications that I had done to it. And then some modifications that Yamaha came up with, which were quite brilliant. The neck to body on a lot of basses is screwed in.
Yeah.
And on the Fender basses, I can take any Fender bass off the wall. No offense to Fender, because Fender is great and the probably the best, and push this way, and the neck will move in the socket a little bit. And I noticed that on my original P bass back in the day. So I had to screw those screws in really tight, shim them and everything. So now they did a different neck to body joint on the Yamaha, which kind of gives me what the P bass was, only much more solid. And again, no slight intended against Fender, because they're just they started the whole thing as far as I'm concerned. And the P bass was what I wanted so much. But at the time, endorsements were happening, and I was getting a record deal, and things were going on like that. Fender at that time was not in great shape. The instruments from that era aren't really prized. They were doing a lot of shortcuts, and the company got sold, and whoever was running it. Now they're back up to speed, and they're as good or even better than ever. So I love Fender, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Who couldn't? But at that time, Yamaha came to me and asked me if they could make a bass, and to see if I liked it, I'd be interested in endorsing them. And they did. They made a couple basses, but the Attitude bass was what they came up with, which is very much like my original P bass. We measured some of the dimensions. The neck was a 1968 Telecaster bass neck on that old bass, on that P bass. So they measured that exactly and duplicated that. So all the ones you buy now have that same dimension as my original neck. And then the pickup configurations was basically a P bass, but I added a Gibson EBO pickup, which is a famous pickup, big silver thing on the old Gibson basses, with super deep low end. Jack Bruce used it. The bass player from Chicago, Mel Shacker. Mel Shacker from Grand Funk had one. I've seen pictures of his basses with one on there. It's a super way of getting super deep low end off a bass. So we did a version of that pickup on the Attitude basses, and they've been just fantastic. Yamaha quality control is second to none. I've been to the factory. You could literally eat off the floor. It is so clean, and it's so perfect. Wow. And all the people that work there are grand masters at their craft. I mean, this is all they do. And they work at Yamaha for like 50 or 60 years doing that one thing, and it's perfect. So it's quite a great company. I'm very, very happy to be associated with them. And again, it started with Fender for me, of course, and that'll always be in my DNA. But the Yamahas have been just there for me, never let me down. They sound great. Tone-wise, there's a couple things I do that are a little different. I have two pickups on my bass. They each go to separate amps. Each amp is a different sound. When you play, they mix together. Primarily because you want some distortion, you're going to lose your low end, because the distortion needs that sine wave. That's why you hear a guy with a subwoofer in his car. You can hear him from 10 blocks away, because that sine wave travels, because it's just a smooth wave. When you make it jiggly, it won't go through a wall. It won't move air and matter like a sine wave will. So it's a way of getting one amp doing super deep low end all the time, and the other amp doing all the other stuff. So you can get, it's the best of both worlds in a lot of ways. And I'm not the only one that has done it. Many companies have made instruments like that also. But I started in 71. I wanted my bass to also do the Gibson sound, which is a deep low sound. So I added one to my P bass, and we duplicated now on the Attitude bass. A little bit geekish for some of your listeners, maybe, but I apologize for that.
No, my gosh. That's what we're here for. That's what the people come to Brockway's Vinyl Bites for, is to hear the details that especially here with you, they're coming here to hear stuff that maybe they won't hear elsewhere. You know what I mean? And it's coming straight from the man, Billy Sheehan. That is so amazing. And I'm so glad that you took the time out to be here with me today. Honestly, God bless you, my friend.
My pleasure, Cody. Thanks for having me. Thanks for your patience. I know when we tried to schedule this initially, when usually there's a publicist and a record company, and you go through them and they set up your schedule, and it's real easy. When I'm doing it myself, I just got home from tour, and there's a million little things, and my to-do list is I won't hold it up, but it's long. and I've been at it. So I thank you for your patience in making this happen.
Of course. Well, I do have two more minor questions, but this will be pretty much fly through. I know you've talked many times, and even in this episode, about your influences, so we won't dig too much into that. But if you had to pick 5 albums, or which are very sort of what you would consider detrimental to your inspiration behind playing the bass, what would they be for you?
The Yardbirds, having a rave up with the Yardbirds. Yardbirds were the band which, at one point, had Jimmy Page, Jeff Beck, and Eric Clapton were in that band, but they had a bass player named Paul Samwell Smith, and he played stuff on that record that just blew my mind. It was Yngwie on bass back in '66. I think it's when the record came out. I mean, the actual, not a really particularly challenging thing now, but back then we had never heard anybody play like that. So I'd have to say that was the very first, the Vanilla Fudge, their first record. Tim Bogert on bass, mind-blowing. The band was mind-blowing. The songs were unbelievable. None of them were original either. They do all copy tunes, but they do them in this grandiose, amazing way. And Tim Bogert was just instantly my hero for bass. I was very fortunate later to become friends with him when I lived in LA. What a sweet, wonderful, incredible guy. And he's really where, when I heard him play, I followed that path for a long time, and then discovered other players that were a little bit more active on the bass, including Paul McCartney. I'd have to put, I'll make this about bass players. I'd have to put, I think maybe Sgt. Pepper's. That's probably one of their greatest records, the Beatles.
Oh, yeah.
Paul McCartney's bass playing is just, he's beautifully, there you go.
Not Sgt. Pepper, but big Beatles fan.
Oh, from the beginning. Just hearing some of the things he did, the song Rain, Little Help from My Friends, the bass lines, and he's all over the neck, and it's really cool. And it was a great example of how a bass played melodically within the structure of a song really is a beautiful thing. Motown, James Jamerson, the bass is the most active instrument in the whole mix. The drums are just keeping the beat. The vocals are singing the vocals. The piano's playing chords, and the bass is all over the place. And that's what made Motown for me an exciting thing. So that was that's. So I'd say I'm not sure which album by James Jamerson I could point out, but that gets me up to 4: Yardbirds, Vanilla Fudge, Sgt. Pepper's, anything with James Jamerson on it.
Well, there's lots. I mean, he was with the Temptations, Marvin Gaye, lots of projects, right?
Brilliant.
Stevie Wonder.
Just brilliant, absolutely. And just genius player. Let me see what number 5 would be. I might say, I might say Disraeli Gears. Another
Nice.
early record. And that was Jack Bruce, Ginger Baker, and Eric Clapton. And the interplay between guitar and bass and drums was important for me to learn then, that you can be eclectic and, for the lack of a better word, even a little busy. But if you're doing it together, it falls together. Because there are some complicated pieces of music that have a lot of guys playing a lot of different things, but it's all coordinated into a thing. Where these guys did that, but it was mostly a jam. I don't think they did any pre-performance meeting about what was going to happen. It just kind of happened. And that to me is one of the most glorious forms of music. It just kind of spontaneous happened. And a lot of the stuff on Disraeli Gears were like that for me. And as a bass player, Jack Bruce, I had a wonderful opportunity to spend a day with him one time in New York. We did a cover story for Guitar World magazine. And what a sweet, wonderful, great guy with amazing stories. And we were back and forth with our band gig stories. You could have probably done Spinal Tap 2 movie out of our stories alone there for that day. But what a wonderful guy. So I made it more about bass, but those would be my 5 bass go-to records. Since then, there are many other things, and not only bass. I listen a lot to a lot of sax players and pianists, guitarists, of course, and all kinds. Paco de Lucia, flamenco guitar. Carlos Montoya, people like that, because they're fingerstyle players as well, and some of that adapts to bass, not all of it, but some of it.
Yeah, Jaco, obviously, right? Jaco Pastorius. I mean, that's the one that kind of
Yeah, we had an opportunity to meet and get a photo of me, Jocko, Jeff Berlin, and Tim Bogart together at about 2 weeks into me arriving in LA to start with Dave. I posted it online a couple of times. It's pretty cool. But he was a
I
wonderful
gotta
guy.
go hunt that one down.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go scour your page to find that.
Yeah, I posted it a couple of times. If you Google Jeff Berlin, Tim Bogart, Billy Sheehan, Jocko Webster, it probably will show up.
Cool. And the last question is, what is next on the musical palette of Billy Sheehan? What are you going to be doing next? What's your next project?
I've got 3 or 4 options that I'm looking at of who to play with in what capacity. I hope to be out by next summer playing something, performing live. I live to play live and I play live to live. So live performance is very important to me. So I'll be putting together something, making some decisions. In the meantime, as soon as I got home, I had about 20 songs to record. So my engineer popped over here. We went right to it. So there's been no rest. So today is one of my first days off. So after this interview, I'm cutting loose and going to have a little bit of fun, even since the tour ended. But I do a lot of recording in my home. People contact me from around the world to play bass on their records, and me and my engineer sit in here and figure out the best thing to do for everybody. We had some really successful recordings, successful in that the people were very pleased with how they came out from people around the world. So we do a lot of that in the meantime, and I've been writing like a fiend and practicing like a maniac. So hopefully by next summer, I will maybe inched up a tiny bit. I hope anyway. So,
well, when the next album is out and you got the time, I sure hope that you'll be back here on Brockway's Vinyl Bites to talk once more. Thank you so much for coming on today. You have always been one of my favorite musicians, and you're just a very cool guy. And so thanks for coming to chat with us today.
Well, it takes one to know one. It takes one to know one, Cody. Thank you very much for having me. And anytime in the future, anything is up, get in touch again, and we'll do a part 2.
Okay. And for you guys, thank you so much for watching. Mr. Big has a brand new record out. Just came out back in July. It is called 10, and they have a new live album out, The Big Finish Live. You can buy that on DVD, vinyl. You guys put it out on SACD, which was really cool too. That's pretty cool. Of course, if you're in Canada like me, we got to wait a few more weeks, but such is life. It's okay. But yeah, thanks, Billy. And to everyone who's watching Brockway's Vinyl Bites right here, right now, don't forget the most important thing you could ever learn. This is my trademark, Billy. Rock on!
Woohoo!